Hey YouTube, my name is Ivan Albrook and welcome back to another Pokemon video. Today we were going to be discussing the post-rotation meta going forward in the Journey Together format. Yeah, before we do so, as you can tell, I feel a little bit sick and I might sound that way, but don't worry, I'm all good. I'm just have a little bit of a cold and I'm sure I'm going to be able to make it through the video no problem. So if you guys enjoy my content, please comment, like, and subscribe. And yeah, let me know down below what post-rotation deck you look forward to playing. So without further ado, let's get into things. So as you can see here, this is the Scarlet and Violet Onwards format. The Sword and Shield cards are finally out of the standard format. We had Brilliant Stars, Astral Radiance, Lost Origin, and Silver Tempest in this current format right now. But in a few weeks, rotation's going to happen, and we're going to go through the meta decks and stuff like that. So notable cards we're going to miss out on is Radiant Greninja, Lugia V-Star, Roxanne. We're going to miss out on Manaphy, Forest Sealstone, Lumineon V, Rotom V, and a plethora of other cards. So going forward, it is Scarlet and Violet base set onwards to Journey Together, and we're going to go through it right now. So let's start with one of the newer decks. I'm going to talk about Mamoswine. So Mamoswine has this cool ability where once per turn you can add a Pokemon from your deck to your hand. I'm not sure if it's when it evolves, but it might be once per turn. I'm not too sure. I'm a little hazy on the text. And it does more damage if you have multiple stage 2 Pokemon in play. You know, and it's a pretty sweet deck that I'm looking forward to trying out. In terms of its place on the tier list, I think I'm just going to put it in B tier. I think it's unproven right now, but I think it's got a lot of potential to be a good deck. So I'm just going to keep it in B tier for now. Not too sure if it should be A or C, but I think B is just appropriate just because from what I know, the deck is pretty solid and it hasn't proven itself yet. So we'll see what happens with that deck. Let's talk about Gardevoir. So Gardevoir is pretty solid. It does lose out on the Refinement Kirlia finally. Gardevoir, since its release, has been a big threat in the meta for Pokemon. It's been consistent. It got second at Worlds in 2023. It's done very well at big tournaments. It's won many tournaments. And it's losing its consistency engine and it's losing its draw power. So it's going to be a little bit weaker than usual. But I think a good Guardy deck builder will find a way to make it as solid as possible. And for that reason, I still think it's a solid deck. It's going to be B tier. I'm not too sure if it's going to be one of those top decks, but I can see some people trying to make it work. So we're going to throw it in B tier. Let's talk about the Eevee deck. So this one's pretty interesting. It's seen a little bit of play before the rotation. I've played against it in online tournaments and such. And I haven't been sold on it quite yet, but with this new rotation and stuff like that, I feel like it gets a little bit better. And I don't think it's a bad deck. I think it's fairly strong. It has a decent Dragapult matchup. If you play the Gravity Mountain and such, it doesn't really lose a whole lot at rotation. So I think the Flareon deck is probably like half decent. So I'm going to keep it in B tier. Yeah, seems pretty good. Let's talk about Frostlass. I think this deck's pretty solid. A lot of decks are going to struggle against it. I think decks that use abilities and such like that are gonna, have a little bit of trouble with it. It's gonna be a really annoying deck, I find. It's not horrible though. I've played against it. I've played against it post rotation and pre rotation, and it's pretty good. It's not bad at all. It's probably at the tail end of B tier though, in my opinion. It hasn't proven itself to be a really, really good deck. It's solid, and I feel like it gets a little bit better with this rotation, so I'm gonna keep it in B. Let's talk about the Hops deck. So I don't know a ton about the deck. I haven't tested against it. I haven't tested with it yet. But it seems decent. I know the Hops double is kind of like a boss, and the Cramorant is crazy, being able to attack for basically 1 energy if your opponent has exactly 3 or 4 prize cards left. It's not bad. But I'm not too sure on how good it's going to be. So for me, it's going to go C. That it could be wrong. It could be a lot better than what I think it is, but for now, I'm going to keep it in C. Iono's Belly Bolt, kind of the same thing. I don't know a ton about it. And I know it does accelerate energy and such, so I mean, like, could see playing Miraidon or whatnot. But for now, I'm going to keep it in C. I just haven't seen a ton of results with the deck. So for now, it's going to stay in C. Yeah, I might as well bring Miraidon into C tier as well. It loses quite a bit at rotation. You lose your Raichu V, your Raikou V, you lose your Forest Seal Stone. And I think that those Pokemon, and also loses Lumineon V, which is another big card that a lot of decks lose. But I think Miraidon, until someone figures it out, I don't think it's going to be that great. And you know what? It's proven itself to be good in certain formats. Like this current format, it's pretty good. And you know, it's been up and down. Like Miraidon has seen a lot of play or a little to none play, back and forth for a bunch of different formats. But for this post-rotation format, I think it's one of the weaker decks that are currently still in play. So Miraidon sitting in C tier. Let's talk about Future. I think Future is pretty damn good. I feel like the deck can utilize Iron Hands quite a bit better now. Most decks are still reliant on evolution and stuff like that, so Iron Hands can take advantage of that. And certain builds play like the Cyber Drive Miraidon and other different variants. Some play Thorns, and I still think I think this deck has potential to be really good. It's been out for about a year now, I want to say. So I think it has potential to actually be really good. So Iron Hands and the Future deck is going to be B tier for me. I think it's got potential, so we shall see. Ancient Box, I don't think this deck is very good now that Pokestop and Radiant Greninja are gone. Those are a couple cards that really help the deck to chug along and, you know, stay consistent. Now that it's lost that kind of edge, I think the deck just isn't as good anymore. I could be wrong. Someone could be toying with it right now and making it good. But in my eyes right now, until I'm proven otherwise, I think it's a C tier deck. It's not that great. Speaking of not that great, Shen Pao is going to be the D tier deck of the list. I just can't see this deck succeeding without Radiant Greninja or Pokestop. And especially with Badoo, I think it's kind of in the grave now. You have no Palkia V-Star either to pair it with. Shen Pao loses like half of its life pretty much because of this rotation and stuff. So I think Shen Pao is going to be one of the weaker decks. Terra Box, very, very good deck. I haven't tested it out personally yet, but I have some friends that have, and they have said it's very strong. And I think the Terra aspect of the cards are going to be pretty important coming up. You see a lot of decks utilize that Sparkling Crystal A-Spec, like the Flareon deck, and obviously the Terra Box deck is going to utilize that card quite a bit. And I think we're going to see a lot of Terra Box going forward. So A tier for sure, very strong deck. The Lilies deck, Clefairy on its own is pretty good, especially with the tool card where they take one less prize. It's a good healthy card. It makes dragons weak to Psychic, which is really good because Dragapult is now weak to it, and so is Raging Bolt. However, I think the Lily deck itself probably isn't that great. I'm just going to stick it in C tier. I could be wrong. I haven't really looked into the deck that much. But just on paper, it just doesn't seem that great. Slowking. This deck is pretty interesting. I think it gets a lot better because Manaphy's gone and it always wants to utilize that Kyurem Trifrost attack. So I'm going to stick Slowking in B tier. I feel like it's going to be a good rogue deck. It's going to catch a lot of decks off guard now that Manaphy is gone. And there's no bench barrier until the next set. So Slowking is going to, see maybe a little bit of play going forward. We'll see. And I want to try it, so I'm going to try this deck at some point. Raging Bolt, I'm actually going to stick in A tier. I think this deck is really good. Yeah, it loses Pokestop and it loses Greninja. But the Noctowl engine that you pair with the Teal Mask Ogerpons keeps it afloat, and I think the deck has a lot of potential to be one of the strongest decks in the format, and it's been consistently strong for a while. There's been a couple metas where it, didn't do so well, but Raging Bolt is going to see a lot of play as it has since Twilight Masquerade, and I think Raging Bolt will thrive in this format. I think the Noctowl engine is a very, very strong engine. It's kind of like the new standard engine for most decks. Losing Greninja and drawing some cards. Noctowl, you just search some cards. So, big improvement to the Raging Bolt deck, in my opinion. For Alligator, this is absolutely an A tier deck, in my opinion. I think this is the new best single prize attacking deck. This deck won Champions League Fukuoka about a month ago, and it is very good. I've been testing it post rotation, and it's very strong. So it just has a slight inconsistency issue, in my opinion. You don't draw a ton of cards with the deck, which can kind of hinder it. But I still think it's going to be the best single prize deck going forward. So I think it belongs in the A tier. Goldengo, I'm probably going to stick in B tier. On its own, it's kind of okay. Badoo really hurts it now. I think you have no Greninja to kind of bail you out and draw you some cards. You lose Pokestop, you lose Roxanne. I think Goldengo is still solid. And in this current format, it's one of the most dominant decks. It's seen a lot of play. I think next to Dragapult in this current format, it's probably the second best deck right now. Maybe Guardy, but it's top 3 for sure. And Goldengo is always going to be consistent, in my opinion. It just draws a ton of cards, and obviously you're going to hit what you hit with those cards that are drawn. Alright, let's talk about Charizard. Okay, this deck has gone up and down for the last few formats, but I still think it's going to be half decent. I think it's going to be in that B tier. These are all in no specific order. I just want Frostlass in the last place slot. And honestly, some of these decks are unproven right now. We don't know how good Guardy is going to be. Charizard is kind of the same way. We don't know if it's going to be good or not. I know some people are going to do well with it. They're going to find ways to do well with it. But to me, I think the deck is still solid. And I don't know if it's going to win any tournaments, but I think it's going to do well at some. So sticking it in B tier seems fine to me. I think Dragapult is the best deck in the format. It's currently the best deck in the format, and I think it stays that way because it's the main deck of this current format that loses the least. You lose Lance, you lose Lumineon, you lose Rotom, and you lose Forest Sealstone. Lance is honestly a bigger loss than the other two cards, or a few cards, in my opinion. But honestly, I think Dragapult works just fine without it. I think it's still really good. And if you have a good build of it, you can do well. So, Dragapult, S tier. End Zoroark box. This deck is okay. I'm gonna put it towards the bottom. I think it's probably a little better than Slowking. I don't know. I think the deck is very linear and lackluster. You can't do a whole lot of creative stuff with the deck because you're so limited with what attacks you can use. However, I feel like people are still going to try and make it work and find a good consistency engine. You do lose the Dark Patch. You do have the Ends PP up. Yes, it's a funny name. But I think the deck is okay. I haven't tested it personally. And I know it will see some plays because N is a fan favorite character, and the Zoroark with the trade ability is too good not to at least try, in my opinion. Blissey, I think this deck is very good. I've been testing it, and I'm very excited to use it. I think this deck has a lot of potential to be within the top 3 decks of the format. Blissey is a very strong and beefy stage 1 attacker. You can manipulate what energies are on what Pokemon. You can chain Monkey Dories with a Blissey. It's a really cool deck. And you also pair that with the Milotic, the Farigiraf EX, and the Cornerstone Mask EX. So I think Blissey's really good, and I think I'm going to keep it in A tier. I think it's got a lot of promising aspects. Speaking of promising aspects, I'm putting our Chaladon in A tier. This deck is really good, in my opinion. Yes, you kind of lose to Pikachu EX, but depending on the build, you can get around that. I've seen our Chaladon list playing the Poison Engine with Root Bonnet and Pecharunt and Binding Mochi. And I've seen our Chaladon list play the Baby Scizor and the Scizor EX, which is what I'm currently playing for our Chaladon, and it's worked very well for me. And it might be one of the top decks for me going forward. So I'm going to stick our Chaladon in A tier. I think Walls is actually an S tier deck. This is a format where we don't have a ton of counters for it. And I think that the deck is going to thrive, and we're going to see a decent amount of play. Like, this is the first time in a while where I think a control deck is going to see a ton of play. So the Milotic Walls, you know, some people might put it in like A or B tier, but I don't think people are realizing how powerful the deck really is once it's set up. It's very hard to beat for some deck. So I think Walls deserves to be an S. And this might be the sleeper pick, but I think Ceruledge is actually an A tier deck. I've played it. It is very linear. And I know you lose your Greninja and you lose your Palkia. But the Ceruledge that runs the Revavroom, that you discard a basic and you draw until you have 6, is super helpful. You can use both on one turn to get 2 extra energies in the discard pile per turn. And I think this deck is very promising. And I think it's going to see a somewhat decent amount of play. I've been trying it a little bit. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's kind of slept on a little bit. So Ceruledge in the A tier for me. And obviously we're out of decks to talk about now, so that's going to wrap everything up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys agree with anything, leave a comment down below on what deck you think is going to be strong. And if you disagree, leave a comment on what you disagree on and tell me what deck you think is going to be in A tier or S tier, B tier, whatever. Just let me know in the comments down below. And if you comment, you might as well like and subscribe. It's only going to help me from here on out. So So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace out.